Hello, hello. I'm John Laspina, your carnivore teacher, and today I have the privilege of introducing someone truly happy, sexy, and healthy. She's extraordinary. Stephanie Taylor, a woman who is defying the odds and showing what the human body can do when given the right fuel and mindset. Stephanie was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, but instead of surrendering to the standard narrative, she decided to take control of her health and her healing. And through courage, faith, and commitment, she turned to the carnivore diet. And the results have been nothing short of incredible. Her story is one of resilience, hope, and biological truth. She's not just surviving, she is thriving. Today, we'll talk about her journey, how she discovered the power of meat-based nutrition, what changes she experienced physically and mentally, and what message she wants to share with others who might be facing their own health battles. Stephanie, my friend, it's an absolute honor to have you here.
John, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here to share this message and to be on your channel because we do every Sunday, we do Sunday School Carnivore live on your channel, Carnivore Teacher. And I'm a regular viewer of your channel and I absolutely love it.
I'm so happy that you're here, and I really appreciate you doing this. All right, so I'm going to start by asking the question, can you take us back to the moment you were first diagnosed with ovarian cancer? What was going through your mind, and what did doctors tell you about your prognosis?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. And it wasn't that long ago. It was in January of 2024. And in the October of 2023, just a few months before, I had had an ultrasound scan. I had gone to my doctor to ask for an ultrasound scan because I felt so extraordinarily tired. And this was very, very unusual for me because usually I have good energy and suddenly it felt like a weight was pressing me down, and just to get out of bed and move through my day and do ordinary things was taking so much out of me. And I was concerned, why am I so tired, why am I so tired, and why am I sort of dragging myself up the stairs and carrying on like an elderly person, not an elderly person on the carnivore diet, but I was only 54, 52, and I thought, this isn't it. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And the only thing that I knew that I had was fibroids. And so I went to the doctor and said, could I have an ultrasound scan, please, to see what's going on? Because I've been feeling very tired. And the only thing I can think of is maybe it's got something to do with my fibroids. And I'd had an ultrasound scan in 2020, but for whatever reason, it hadn't been reported properly. So when the report came back to my doctor, it wasn't clear, had the fibroids grown, were they bigger or smaller, whereabout were they, etc. We didn't know any of that. And it took a while again, that was during the lockdown, until I got the next ultrasound scan in 2023. And then after that, in October, they found these growths, and immediately I knew, my intuition told me this is cancer, because that makes sense, because you hear people say that when they have cancer and it's growing, they feel very tired. So that was the only thing I could think of to make sense of it. However, I was still going through biopsies and tests and scans and all this and then Christmas holidays came in. So it was January of 2024. I went in to see my oncologist, and she said, you've got stage 4 high-grade serous ovarian cancer, metastasized to the liver, the kidney, the spleen, the bowel, and the omentum, which is the lining of the whole abdomen area. So that diagnosis, I was already prepared in my mind from October, when I got the results of the scan that said there were growths on my ovaries, knowing how I was feeling and that it was different to how I'd felt. And I looked up the prognosis, how long do people generally live with this prognosis? And on Cancer UK, because I live in the UK, on the Cancer UK website, it said that for stage 4 ovarian cancer, women with this diagnosis die within, it gives the percentage of women with this diagnosis who die within 5 years of the date of diagnosis. And it's 85% of women with ovarian cancer die within 5 years of the date of diagnosis. And so that was a scary reading. So only 15%, live. And of those, obviously, you don't know by reading this whether these people are well, living happy, healthy lives, or whether they are sick, very sick. So I knew from that moment of reading that even if I did everything that was said to me by the health service, the National Health Service in the UK, my chances of being here in 5 years were only 15%. And that was crushing. It was crushing. It was here. I had something else over me now, and it's like this blanket of sadness, of a new realization. Of course, we're all going to die, and we know that logically, but we don't live with that as a conscious thought day by day. Most of us don't. And so I then start thinking, what is my son going to do? I've got an adult son, Alex, and what's he going to do without me now? Asking him when I'm going to get grandchildren. No. You know, how's Alex going to manage without me? Of course, he will manage absolutely fine. He's grown up into a fine young man. I'm very proud of him. And but I'll just say a word about that, John, because I was reading about people who had survived cancers that they were unlikely to survive, like me. Hopefully, I will be one of them. But I was listening to people, and what I found that they were saying was, I did not take it on board that I was going to die. I did not let it come into my consciousness. I just never believed that I would be dying of this cancer in the very near future. But when I tried that, I found I had a lot of dissonance. You know, I had a lot of disbelief. And I found that I felt very stiff and very stressed trying to believe that I'm not going to die of the cancer. And everyone is different. So you have to find your own way to make it feel good for your own mind. So what I found better was to believe I may die sooner than I had thought, hoped, or anticipated. And that's okay. Everybody I love will be fine, and I will be fine. And I will have the life that I'm meant to have. And for me, that felt very freeing, very liberating. I felt very happy about that because it didn't mean I was giving up. I'm still doing everything I can to make sure that I have the long life, and that my sister and I are little old ladies together with my mum, who will be moving to Wales soon, which is where we live, to be nearer us. And we'll be the 3 little old ladies. And our favorite, my son, is the only grandson and only nephew. So we're all like grannies as far as he's concerned. And that we'll have our lovely life together. And however long or short it is, that it will be beautiful. And for me, that made all the difference. I just felt so at peace. It just brought me such happiness and such confidence. And just one final thought on this area of relationships. I am grateful for this cancer diagnosis because the one thing it did do was make me realize how important these relationships are. That family and friends and, carnivore community all around us, these are the joy in my life. These people, being with you, being with other inspiring people, being with the people I love, being with the people who love me, all of these are what makes my life happy and beautiful. And nothing else is more important. Other things, of course, add to the flavor of life, but the people are the most important. And so after getting the cancer diagnosis, I found that my friendships became deeper. People confided in me, things that maybe they wouldn't have done before, troubles and issues that they've been having in their life, because I've been open about an issue, this cancer diagnosis that I've had in my life, which has knocked me for six at the time. And that has opened the door to deeper relationships with my family and my friends and with the wider community.
That is so beautifully said. I want to review a little bit of that and then ask you a question. So your mindset is key. You, instead of saying I will die, I may die, and that's okay. And so there was a large relief. Family and friends became so important, and the relationships got deeper. And if you don't have cancer or anything, we can learn from this about sharing and relationships. But the fact that you were faced with this amazing, I don't want to say amazing, but terrible potential outcome, you took that baton and you ran with it in such an amazing way with such strength. And I see why you adopted the handle happy, sexy. Oh, it makes so much sense. You just explained why that became your mantra and your title, and I love it. So I want to go into a different direction now with the cancer. When you were diagnosed, what treatments did they suggest that you do immediately? Did you do them? And I'm not talking about food and carnivore. I'm talking about the standard of care.
Yeah. So the standard of care in the UK, in my area, is 3 chemotherapy treatments, carboplatin and paclitaxel, a scan, and then, if appropriate, an operation. And then after the operation, 3 more treatments of chemotherapy. Now, I was hopeful not to do chemotherapy because, once you start learning about the carnivore community and the keto, you realize that some cancers can, or some tumors can shrink just on the basis of the keto therapeutic ketosis, and also other therapies such as hyperbaric oxygen and sauna. So I got myself a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I rented one and I went in it twice a day at home. And I got a home far infrared sauna, and I went in it each morning, every day at home. And I also was doing the carnivore diet. Now, I'd only recently started. I didn't know all the details of it. I didn't realize so much about the therapeutic ketosis. And although I've described my emotional journey, at the beginning, I was devastated. I was crying all the time. If somebody said hello to me and gave me a hug, I would just start crying. I'm crying almost thinking about it because I was just so emotional all the time. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is I was aware that fasting would help, but at the time I didn't feel in a position mentally to do fasting. And I was doing carnivore and I was eating quite a decent amount of food. So I wasn't really in ketosis. And I was, at the time of the diagnosis, I had a biopsy. Now, the biopsy was very sore. at the time, and I believed that the biopsy did something because the moment of diagnosis wasn't the moment that the cancer started. So the cancer was there and it was kept to a certain level. My belly was a little bit puffy, but it wasn't like sticking out. People wouldn't have thought I was pregnant, put it like that. Anyway, between the January that I got diagnosed, 2024, to the March of 2024, it grew out. I wish I had the picture to hand, but I don't. And I looked like I was 9 months pregnant. And if I went to the gym or anything, I was just doing walking because it's cold in this country, as you know. So sometimes we do our walking inside. So sometimes if I'm away from home or at a hotel or something, I would just go to the gym and do my walking, especially because it's dark as well. It gets dark quite early in the UK in the winter. So say if I went to the gym, I'd just be wearing tight clothing and people would be congratulating me. Oh, congratulations. When's it due? How's your baby? Is it your first one? Blah, blah, blah. And all of this chit chat about the baby. And it was quite scary, to see it growing so fast. And that was when I was speaking to some cancer doctors who have more of a natural plus chemo sort of guidelines, and they do a lot on food therapy and other therapies as well as chemotherapy and all the rest of it. Anyway, I spoke to two individuals separately and told them about my situation and where I was at with it and what was going on. And they said that they hadn't come across anybody with my stage of this type of cancer, and that possibly it would be in my benefit to accept the chemotherapy and then, continue with the other therapies alongside. And I'm not saying that there isn't a natural therapy that I could have used to sort of reverse things, but I didn't know it at that time, which is the important thing. And I was doing the best I could in terms of I was eating a strict carnivore diet, but I'm not in ketosis because of the volume of food. But it was growing. So I think sometimes I think about if it's a snowball coming down a hill and you catch it near the top, you can just more or less push it back up. But if you've let it roll and it's now at an advanced stage, gone to all different parts of your body and really taken hold and, getting the energy, then it takes a lot more force to stop that snowball from growing.
Would you say it was the biopsy that you think triggered stimulated its growth?
Yes. Yeah.
I've heard that when oxygen hits it or they disturb it. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, because they talk about cancer as a way of healing you, that when toxins form in your body, they're put together and a shell is come around them. And although they can grow out of control, they're kept in that shell. And when you come along and put a hole in, which is essentially what happens, and then take stuff out, of course, some of the cells are going to escape and go different places. So I believe that's what happened. So I then did have the chemotherapy, and thank goodness for the chemotherapy. Whenever I'm talking about this online, there's always people who say, well, you shouldn't have chemotherapy. It's toxic. Absolutely right. It is toxic. And it will, you hope that it kills the cancer before it kills your healthy cells. You hope that your healthy cells can survive the toxicity. But in my case, thank goodness that I had it, because I didn't have at that time that I knew of another viable alternative to reverse what was going on. That one on the very right on my image anyway is where the belly had grown.
Oh my goodness, look at that. You do look pregnant. That must have been so hard for you, for people to come up to you and congratulate you with big smiles. And what did you say to them? How did you respond?
Well, honestly, you know, when somebody's pregnant, people come up with such joy.
Right. Oh,
Um, they come up with such joy and happiness for you. And so I just replied with joy and said,
oh,
it's
thank,
not my first one. And
oh,
and I was just happy with them because I
oh,
could explain. If I knew them, obviously I would explain. But
right.
if it's just somebody going past me in the gym and just having a quick little chat.
Well, see what a nice person you are. Somebody might have said, "Thank you. This is not my baby. This is a tumor," and then they would feel horrible and feel
Yeah.
so upset. And you didn't do that to them, so that tells something beautiful about your character. So you did chemo, and it saved you because you didn't know about all the details. So
Yeah.
let's go into the carnivore diet now and ketosis. You mentioned that even though you ate carnivore, you said you ate a lot of volume, which kept you out of ketosis.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, ketosis happens when you don't have enough glucose. The fatty acids make ketones no matter what the volume, unless the protein's way too high. So
Yeah.
can you address that? Like, do you know now why you weren't in ketosis, even though you weren't consuming sugar and carbs?
Yeah. So I think people vary in their ability to go into ketosis. It might be different if people have previously been insulin resistant. So, for example, I would guess that for many, many, many decades that I was insulin resistant because I wasn't type 2 diabetic, but I did have a inverted commas healthy high carb diet. I was eating mainly carbohydrates, healthy, so I thought, plus a lot of fruit and vegetables, very little red meat and saturated fat. And so I believe because of the fibroids, because of the cancer, that I was insulin resistant. So if you got that history of insulin resistant, I think that might make a difference to your ability to go in and out of ketosis.
Yeah.
So when I was eating the meat, I then started the carnivore diet. I then started at one stage, testing my ketones and my blood sugar once in the morning and once at night, just to see what the patterns were. And what I noticed is that I might be zero point 0.5, which is barely, or I might be 1. Sometimes I might be under zero point 0.5. So I wasn't consistently in ketosis. And so what Professor Thomas Seyfried says is that he's written about and researched for many decades about the metabolic cause of cancer. And what he says is that you need to have a glucose ketone index of under 3. And the glucose ketone index, or GKI, is your blood sugar divided by your ketones gives you your GKI. So if your blood sugar, for example, was 5 millimolars per liter, I know it's different in America, and it's 2, and your ketones were 2.5, your GKI would be 2. So that would be a therapeutic level of ketosis. Under 3 is good, but under 2 is even better. So I was struggling to get myself into this therapeutic level of ketosis. And I know that you can get in there by fasting. But again, at this particular point in time, I wasn't fasting. I had previously done a 7-day water fast, but I think I stretched it a bit too far because the first 4 days were quite easy and the last 3 days were really hard. And I think I should have just stopped a bit earlier and tried again because I think I had a little bit of resistance to fasting after that 7-day fast. But I heard about this thing you can do called fat fasting where you just eat fat. And that was like a godsend because I just ate the fat. And within 3 days, I only did a 3-day fat fast. My ketones had gone from, 0.5 to 1 if I'm lucky, right up to 5, over 5 in the 3-day period. Yes. And my blood sugar was still low. So my glucose index, my GKI was coming in under 2 and sometimes even under 1. So I was in therapeutic ketosis. So I thought, this is amazing. Now let me see what happens when I start eating food. And what I decided to do was just test some things out. I thought, let me just start off with one meal a day and see how much I can eat and maintain GKI under 3, ideally under 2. And I found I could maintain under 2 with one meal a day, which is 400 grams of minced beef. You call it ground beef, and that's just under a pound. 400, there's 454 grams in a pound, so it's just under a pound of minced beef per day, plus 4 eggs. And although I started off OMAD, I started splitting it into 2 meals, just because I found that was a little bit more soothing, and I didn't get like stressed out with it. So I could eat 200. So I'd eat half a pound or 200 grams at the first meal with 2 eggs, and then I would have 200 grams of ground beef at the second meal with 2 eggs. And if I ate that amount, which is quite a small amount it seems like a small amount to me, but my body became used to it. I became used to it after a while. I found it quite filling. I made sure that I poured the fat from the air fryer minced beef over it, so I had enough fat in there, and I find that worked for me. So each person, some people might be able to eat a lot more than that and remain in ketosis, and some people might need to eat less. Some people might need to have a higher proportion of fat to protein, but that's what worked for me, and I could maintain my therapeutic level of ketosis, and I found that helpful.
That's amazing. I want to get to something that some people who are watching this may not know why you're doing this. I and many people who are watching, we get it. We've listened to Thomas Seyfried. We understand. So can you explain for the listening audience the Warburg effect, if you know what that is, and what is this GKI ketosis doing to the cancer cells? Because I think we need to understand there's also glutamine. I'm sure you've learned about that too. It's an amino acid. So share with us your knowledge about what you've learned, how your body is fighting off this cancer with your diet.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that Professor Seyfried and many other researchers have found that cancer works off glucose and glutamine. Now, with glucose, as we know in this world, you can really affect your glucose. But before we go into that, I just want to explain at a really layperson level, because I'm a layperson. I'm not a medical researcher or medically trained, etc. I was researching this as a layperson. But the one thing that really made me know that I was on the right path is that when you have a PET scan, you go to see where the cancer is. A PET scan shows which tumors or growths are actually active cancer, because you can have tumors that are either dead or inactive cancers, or they're not a cancer. And it's very difficult to tell that with an MRI or a CT scan, but with a PET scan you can see which cancer tumors are metabolically active. And how do we do that, John? What they do, and I was horrified when I heard this, is they inject you with what they call a tracer fluid. And that tracer fluid is radioactive glucose. So it's radioactive sugar. Why do they inject you with radioactive sugar? They inject you with radioactive sugar because your cancer cells will take up the sugar at 4 to 9 times the rate of any cell in the body. And some researchers say that it's up to 12 times the rate of any cancer in the body. So as soon as you're injected with that sugar, it goes to the cancer cells. Basically, the cancer cells are metabolizing the sugar for energy. They are, in layman's terms, they are eating the sugar. The cancer cells are fermenting the sugar. They are taking the energy that you are eating from sugar and growing. And so once I knew that, that tells me that one of the levers that's going to be very powerful for me to pull is to stop eating the sugar. That stops the cancer from eating the sugar. However, it's not as simple as that, because if it was, I wouldn't be no longer have the cancer, because I've been doing therapeutic ketosis for some time. Cancer, and especially the more aggressive forms and the more advanced stages of cancer, is actually very adaptable. And within each tumor, there can be lots of different strains of cell. Some of them can be very glycolytic. They are growing on the sugar. However, if you stop the sugar or reduce it a lot, like I have, when I say reduce it a lot, it's because, you know, when you eat protein, your body makes sugar for your brain and so on to work. So there is still some glucose in the system. So when you reduce the sugar as much as possible, those parts of the cancer may stop growing. However, other parts of the cancer then become dominant, and they can be the ones that work on glutamine. Now, it has since been found that cancer can also work on other things, such as there is some research that says they can work on ketones and other things. So, what I need to do is to Professor Seafree calls it press a pulse. So you press against the glucose, which is what I'm doing all of the time. And there are some drugs that they're trying out to press against the glutamine. However, I don't have access to those drugs. But what I can do, and what I've resisted doing somewhat till now, is fast. When you fast, you are not having glutamine. You know, the cancers are going to be stressed out and they're not getting glutamine. So that is something that I'm now pushing forwards with, because there is something called dry fasting, which has a lot of research about it, and it's very fascinating. And when you dry fast, means no water, no food, that really stresses the cancer. Now, your body can adapt because your body can create water. Now, I read an incredible book by August Dunning called The Phoenix Protocol, which goes over all of this. And it does so in a layperson's language, but also it does explain all the science, some of which I understood and some of which I didn't. But the crux of it is that your body creates its own water. It's called metabolic water. And how does it do that? It breaks down your fat cells. Now, usually your body wants to stay alive and it keeps some of those fat cells for when you might need them in the future. However, when you're in a situation of a water fast, it will break down those cells because the water is needed more than the fat. And so it starts to break down your fat cells for water, and it then uses the water very sparingly around the body, and it's not using the water on any cancers, old cells, dead cells. And so what this does is it gives your whole digestive system a rest, and your body is in this state of deep autophagy, self-repairing, self-healing. And they say that if you can go to 3 days plus of dry fasting, you create new stem cells, which is especially healing. So what they say is that a dry fast is 3 times as powerful as a water fast. Now, I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but it's saying that instead of a 1 day, 3 days of water fasting, you could do 1 day of dry fasting and get the same effects. And a while ago, I heard Dr. Eric Berg say that if he had cancer, the first thing he would do is go on a 21-day water fast. Now, that seemed very difficult for me, but the idea of a 7-day dry fast does seem much more attainable. And I've started experimenting. The most I've done a 24-day dry fast, and I've done a 44-hour dry fast as well. And I'm building it up so that I can go towards doing the next I do a 3-day and then 5-day and then 7-day dry fast.
So much information. That's amazing. Most of us have learned or thought that we need air to survive. We will die within a few minutes without oxygen. And the second thing we need is water. That's what we learned. So it's new information for a lot of us to understand that our body makes water from the fat cells. So I did hear Dr. Berg at Hack Your Health last year talk about dry fasting. I haven't tried it yet, but it's very promising to hear how it's helping with cancer. As of today, and everything that you said you've done, and you've gone back to your doctor or your oncologist, what are they seeing in the scans? Has your cancer shrunk or stopped, or has the metastases from your liver, kidney, spleen, and omentum stopped because of your carnivore diet and your amazing outlook?
Yeah, well, it's gone down. The tumors have gone down by about half, but it's still scattered throughout the area. Very awkward, John, very awkward, all over the place. So because it's all over the place, when the surgeons looked at it to consider whether they could do an operation, what they would have to do is they have to remove everything they can see. If they don't remove everything they can see, it just grows back. And even if they remove everything they can see, it could still grow back. Even if they remove everything, it can still grow back in the empty space. So just wanted to set that context, because removing everything is not necessarily a cure, or even, it's no guarantee that it won't grow back. So to do the operation they would have to make me perforated like a tea bag, because each tumor, they would have to do a big margin around it to make sure they got everything, and then that would leave me with holes. And because of the organs that it's on, it could have had organ damage, could have had bowel damage. Apparently the tumors that were on the bowel have gone much smaller now, but so it's still there. This is the interesting thing, John. The tumors are still there, but my health has transformed. So I don't think the tumors tell the whole story, because previously, obviously, I had the tumors and they were growing. But even before they started growing crazy, they were taking all the energy. They were taking all my energy. And so what I speculate about, just from my own experience and not through medical training or expertise, is that when the tumors themselves are not necessarily an issue, what's an issue is what's happening with the tumors. So when they're taking all the energy, they're in a growth phase, your body is getting weaker and weaker. And how you can tell this is that I asked at the beginning, when I was overcome with grief, I said, well, how do people know that they're dying? Because I was scared that I could just die suddenly and not know, because you want to have the chance to, if you know you're ill, you want to have the chance to say goodbye, or to make plans or whatever. And so I asked, well, how do you know you're dying if one were to die of this particular condition, stage 4 ovarian cancer? And they said what usually happens is that you feel your energy leaving your body. You can't go out of bed. You're staying in bed more. You're sleeping more. You're tired more. You don't want to eat. You don't want to speak. You're basically leaving. Your energy is leaving. And I thought, yes, your energy, your life force is leaving your body. So when you feel energetic and when you feel vital, you're not in that. You're not in that situation. Your energy is not spiraling downwards. Your health is spiraling upwards. And even though I still have got the tumors there on the image, I wonder if they are still active and alive, whether they are, dead or dying. And so I have requested a PET scan, because the CT scans and the MRI scans, I've read about case studies. I've seen people telling their stories on YouTube, and what they've said is about many different cancers, not just ovarian. I had a scan. I was surprised that the tumor was still there and so large when I felt so well. And I went in to have the operation to have the tumor removed, and the surgeon said the tumor was dead. It was not attached, it didn't have blood cells. And I've read this story more than once. So I'm aware that they can't necessarily tell from the CT or the MRI whether a tumor is metabolically active, i.e., alive and growing, or whether it is dead and disconnected.
All right. Now, are you not afraid that if you do this PET scan to see if those tumors are dead, like you said, that it's going to bring them back to life because you're feeding them this radioactive glucose? That would be my apprehension to doing this.
Yes. Well, yes and no. I don't know all about it, but I believe it's a small amount of glucose that is used, and I think in some ways it would be good to get the validation. But it is an issue, John, because the other thing is I could just trust in how do I feel, and also I could trust in, because it's in where it is, I can actually see my belly grow when it is there. And also there are some blood tests which show the cancer markers, and I could just rely upon those rather than, as you say, the injection is not made into the area itself. The injection is just made into your bloodstream through your arm, and it goes all over your body, but then it goes to the cancer cells. So yes, that would feed them. And it's obviously not good having radioactive stuff put in your body either. But I do feel, I suppose I feel I may do that if other treatments are suggested or come up and I need to know definitively.
Okay. What message would you give to someone newly diagnosed with cancer who feels lost or afraid? Someone who might be listening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I just think trust yourself, trust the wisdom of your own body, trust your own heart. I think this is a great time to take a little bit of time for yourself, to let yourself be sad if you're sad, to let yourself be angry, to let yourself be frustrated, to feel all those emotions, and then decide what to do. How do you want to move forward? Because you may do something entirely different to me, and you may do something entirely different to someone else. But I think it's very important to listen to what the options are from your doctor, and also to investigate other options that are beyond, such as, carnivore, therapeutic ketogenic diets, metabolic therapies, such as what Professor Seafried talks about, and then make your own decision and back yourself up 100%. So, for example, if I do everything that the doctors say, according to their statistics, on average, only 15% are here at 5 years after diagnosis. So if I get the same outcome when I do things my own way, I'm still going to be happy that I did things my own way, because although we don't always have that entire choice over when we're going to die, we have the entire choice over how we want to live. And so when they're coming to you to say, hey, do you want to have this operation? Now, with this operation, you can live, this is what they said to me, 12 to 18 months longer on average, but you could have all sorts of different organ failure, because you've got quite a few different organs involved. Plus, you could have a bag, colostomy, ileostomy bag for your bowel. That could be quite traumatic. All of that's going to take months of healing. Whereas I decided, I didn't know I felt this way. I decided that quality of life was just as important. And I would rather have 6 or 12 months of quality life where I feel energetic, I'm able to travel, I'm able to see my family and friends, I'm able to do all of the things I do rather than a longer time being sicker.
That makes a lot of sense. And I would probably want to do the same thing. You mentioned with me privately before we were on here live that you're taking a trip. I don't know if you want to share that or not, but what's next for you on this journey? Any goals, milestones, or future plans you're excited about?
Yeah. Oh, John, I'm just I'm excited to be here every day. It just makes you so grateful. And my family are just mean the world to me. And all the friends I made in the carnivore community is so lovely. And sorry, I don't usually cry. I think I cried so much when I was first diagnosed that I don't cry much now. But I'm so excited at the moment and a bit overwhelmed because I'm going away or not for a month because one of the things I've noticed is that I'm so much better in the summer, and in the UK we're known for rain and cold weather even in the summer, although we do actually have some sunshine in the summer. It's not very reliable, but we do have some. But I notice I'm so much better in the summer, and in my research I found that sun and light therapy, now we talk about red light therapy and far infrared therapy. We know about the healing power of different spectrums in sunlight and dusk light and all the different lights. The sun is actually a medicine. We understand that it helps us create vitamin D, such an important hormone. And ever since the 1800s, there's been citations of research showing that in people in the sun heal better from surgeries and disease. And they've done research in hospitals showing people in light hospital wards heal better, people nearer the windows heal better. And so consequently, I've realized that this sun issue I need to take seriously during this healing phase and make sure I get into the sun. So I'm off to Cyprus, to Ayia Napa for a month in October, November, which I've never been away for this long, and I'm slightly an anxious traveler. But I've got this huge sun terrace. I've got this apartment with a sun terrace because that is my intention, to be outside in the sun, working, doing videos. And the other thing that I do, like you, John, is you get so excited to share this healing therapy of the carnivore ketovore diet, what I call primal eating, primal living. That we also, with my sister Nikki, we do this thing called the 21-day primal body reset, and we take people through that. And there's no bigger joy than hearing people say, their gallbladder is no longer painful. They no longer have type 2 diabetes. They no longer have high blood pressure. This is in 21 days. It's just so phenomenal that it's I love sharing it.
That's wonderful. 21-day reset. I can't wait to see you on your balcony. Are we going to do our Carnivore Sundays? Are you going to show up from there when we do it? So I still get to see you and the sun shining, and make sure you show the background with the camera so we can all see where you are. Oh, I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. You are full of love and joy. I can feel it. Your aura, I can sense it from you. And that is probably as important. I really believe it is as important as the food you put in your body. Your outlook is just contagious. People want to be around other people who are smiling and happy, and you're healthy, even though you have these tumors that aren't growing. Trajectory wise, they're going in the right direction. And if they don't go any further and they're just masses that aren't feeding, that's a huge success. That's almost like getting rid of them. I mean, except for, like you said, excising them out of the body. If they're just there, doing anything, that goal has been reached. I'm so happy for you. And you're giving me something to think about. Should I, God forbid, ever have the same diagnosis, I have someone to look to. I have some interviews to listen to and some things to think about in my battle and my journey, should I ever be confronted with that diagnosis. So for myself and all the listeners, we thank you for sharing this. I'm getting the chills just expressing that to you right now. We're at the end of our interview here. Can you tell us where our audience, where we can find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, you can connect with me at Happy Sexy Health on YouTube. And we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. And also, my personal name is Stephanie Taylor, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. And I'd love to talk to anybody if you want to talk about carnivore, or you want to talk about your own cancer diagnosis, or just have somebody give a listening ear. You know, I always like to listen and to talk on those topics.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and sharing your journey. Very personal and very emotional and very spiritual, very healing. And I know my audience, anybody listening, just like the Dave Mack interviews, I know that many people are gonna see this in the future, and you will have touched somebody and changed a life, saved a life possibly, because I know a lot of people who are fighting cancer, and they don't know about the glucose, glutamine, GKI, all the therapies that you talked about. And as you and I know, the standard of care isn't going to share that. That kind of angers me, that part. We should all understand how cancer grows. So thank you again, Stephanie. I'm going to see you again in an hour on our Carnivore Sunday School. I'm going to change shirts for that one. And I really appreciate you coming on. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, John. Bye.